Elena Blackwood grabbed the chair across from him and dragged it backward. The screech of metal against marble silenced the entire restaurant. "You have 10 seconds to move." Daniel Carter looked up from his water glass. His shirt collar was frayed. His watch was scratched. His wallet held $47. He didn't move. "Ma'am, I was here first." Elena leaned down until her face was inches from his. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I do, and I'm still not moving." What happened next would cost him his job, his home, and nearly everything he'd built for his daughter. But it would also break something inside a billionaire that no amount of money could fix. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. Elena Blackwood didn't wait for the manager. She walked straight toward table 14, her heels striking the marble floor like gunshots. The restaurant staff froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every eye followed the most powerful woman in Chicago as she approached a man who clearly didn't belong here. Daniel Carter saw her coming. He'd noticed her the moment she entered, the way the staff scrambled, the way other diners shrank in their seats, the way the air itself seemed to tighten around her presence. Now she stood over his table, blocking the light. "This table is mine." Daniel set down his water glass. "I'm sorry." "I said this table is mine. I have an important meeting and this location is suitable. Management will relocate you." She snapped her fingers without looking back. The manager appeared instantly pale and sweating. "Miss Blackwood, I can explain." "Don't explain. Fix it." Daniel watched the exchange with growing understanding. This woman, whoever she was, had never been told no, had never waited for anything, had never considered that someone like him might matter. He thought of Lily, 9 years old, smart as hell, wearing second-hand shoes because he couldn't afford new ones, asking him last week why some kids had more than others. "Because some people have more money, sweetheart." Does that make them better? No, just luckier. Daniel looked up at Elena Blackwood, her designer suit, her diamond earrings, her absolute certainty that the world would bend to her will. "I'm not moving." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said I'm not moving. I have a meeting too. I was here first. You're welcome to share the table if you'd like." The manager made a strangled sound. Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound without warmth. "Do you know who I am?" "Should I?" "I'm Elena Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries. My company employs 5,000 people. My decisions affect global markets. My time is worth more per minute than you probably earn in a day." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that I was here first. I could buy this entire restaurant. Probably, but you can't buy my seat." Something flickered across Elena's face. Surprise, confusion, and beneath both, a spark of something she hadn't felt in years. Interest. The manager stepped forward, desperation breaking through his professional mask. "Miss Blackwood, we have a private dining room upstairs, much more suitable for your meeting." "No." Elena pulled out the chair across from Daniel and sat down. "If this man won't move, then we'll share. My guest will arrive shortly." She placed her phone on the table face up and looked at Daniel as if seeing him for the first time. "You have interesting principles, Mr. Carter. Daniel Carter. And what do you do, Mr. Carter, that makes you so confident about refusing billionaires?" "I supervise maintenance operations for Westridge Properties." Elena's lip curled. "A handyman. Building systems specialist. You fix toilets and change light bulbs." Daniel held her gaze. "Last month, I identified a critical electrical failure at Mercy Hospital. 3 patients were in surgery when I found it. If I'd missed it, they'd be dead." Elena blinked. Daniel continued, his voice calm and even. "I've designed backup systems that have prevented catastrophic failures during blackouts. Trained teams that keep buildings running when people like you never think about what's happening behind the walls. Saved companies millions in damage prevention." He took a sip of his water. But yes, I also change light bulbs. For a long moment, Elena said nothing. The waiter approached nervously. May I bring you something, Miss Blackwood? The 82 Bordeaux, 2 glasses. She didn't ask Daniel if he wanted wine. She simply ordered for both of them. When the waiter scurried away, Elena leaned back in her chair. You're interesting, Mr. Carter. Most men in your position would have surrendered the table the moment I walked over. I'm not most men. Clearly. She studied him the way she might study a financial report, searching for weaknesses, calculating value. So what brings a building systems specialist to the most expensive restaurant in Chicago? Job interview, facilities director position for a new development project. Ambitious. Practical. The position pays 30% more than what I make now. Better benefits. My daughter needs braces. Elena's eyebrow rose. You're making a major career decision based on your daughter's dental work. I make most decisions based on what's best for my daughter. And what about your own ambitions? Daniel considered the question. My ambitions are my daughter. Everything else is just details. Something shifted in Elena's expression, a crack in the polished surface. How old is she? 9. Her name's Lily. Smart as they come, stubborn as her mother was. Was. Elena caught the past tense. Was. Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Cancer. 4 years ago. It's been just Lily and me since then. The words hung in the air between them. Elena had prepared responses for every business scenario. Market fluctuations, hostile takeovers, board rebellions. She had no preparation for this, a simple statement of loss delivered without self-pity or expectation of sympathy. I'm sorry, she said. The word surprised her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd said them and meant it. Thank you. The wine arrived. Elena took a long sip, using the moment to recalibrate. Raising a child alone must be difficult. It is, but Lily makes it worth every hard day. You speak about her with remarkable warmth. Daniel smiled, the first genuine smile Elena had seen all evening. It transformed his face entirely. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even on the days when I'm exhausted and broke and wondering if I'm doing any of this right, I look at her and I remember why I keep going. Elena felt something twist in her chest, a sensation she couldn't immediately identify. That must be nice, she said quietly. Having something that makes the struggle worthwhile. Daniel tilted his head, studying her with unexpected perception. You don't. I have a company worth billions. I have power. Influence, success. That's not what I asked. Elena's hand tightened around her wine glass. No one spoke to her like this. No one asked questions she didn't want to answer. No one looked at her like this man was looking at her, not with fear, not with greed, not with calculation. Just curiosity. And something that might have been compassion. My work is my life, she said finally. It has to be. When you're building something from nothing, you can't afford distractions. Building from nothing. Daniel seemed genuinely interested. I assumed you came from money. Elena laughed bitterly. I came from a one-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. My first office was my kitchen table. I coded the algorithm that built my company while working 18-hour days and sleeping 3 hours a night. That's impressive. It was necessary. I didn't have anyone to fall back on. No family support, no safety net. Daniel nodded slowly. What happened to your family? The question hit Elena like a physical blow. She should deflect, change the subject. This conversation had already gone further than any she'd had in years. Instead, she heard herself answering. My brother stole my first patent, sold it to my competitor while I was still refining the application. My fiancé emptied our joint accounts the same week, left a note saying my obsession with success made me impossible to love. Daniel didn't flinch, didn't offer empty sympathy, didn't look at her with pity. That's a hell of a betrayal. It was educational. Elena's voice hardened. I learned that affection is just a mask for opportunism, that everyone has a price, that the only person I can truly rely on is myself. That's one lesson you could take from it. What other lesson is there? Daniel leaned forward slightly. That some people are terrible, and some people aren't. The mistake is assuming everyone is the same. Experience suggests otherwise. Your experience, not universal truth. Elena's eyes flashed. 15 years of building this company. 15 years of watching people smile to my face and scheme behind my back. My own COO, the same man who betrayed me as my fiancé, now sits on my board because he manipulated shareholders to get there. Every relationship I've had since has confirmed exactly what I learned that first time. So you stopped having relationships. I stopped being naive. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made Elena's breath catch. Building walls high enough to keep out pain also keeps out everything worth living for. Elena stared at him. That's a nice sentiment for a greeting card. It's not sentiment. It's experience. Daniel's voice was steady. After my wife died, I wanted to shut down, build those same walls, convince myself that nothing good could last, so why bother trying? What stopped you? Lily. Daniel's expression softened. Every time I looked at her, I remembered that I didn't get to give up. She needed a father who could show her that even when life breaks your heart, there's still kindness worth believing in. Still hope worth holding on to. Hope. Elena repeated the word like it was foreign. Hope doesn't close deals. Hope doesn't protect market share. Hope doesn't prevent betrayal. No. But it makes life worth living when you succeed at all those things. Elena had no response. She'd achieved everything she'd ever set out to achieve, built an empire from nothing, accumulated more wealth than she could spend in 10 lifetimes, commanded respect and fear from the most powerful people in business. And sitting across from a man who fixed toilets for a living, she felt for the first time in years that she might be missing something essential. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her expression hardened. My dinner guest has canceled. Apparently something more important came up. Daniel checked his watch. Mine hasn't shown either. No response to messages. Unprofessional. Concerning. It's not like Dave to disappear. Elena signaled the waiter. Since we're both abandoned, we might as well eat. I'll cover it. That's not necessary. I'm aware. I'm doing it anyway. Then I'm paying the tip. Elena raised an eyebrow. The handyman wants to tip on a billionaire's tab. Principles don't change based on who's paying Miss Blackwood. There it was again. That quiet certainty that had nothing to do with money or power or status. Elena found herself smiling an unfamiliar sensation. You're very strange, Mr. Carter. I've been told that before. They ordered dinner. Elena chose her usual seared scallops, dressing on the side, no starches. Daniel picked the roast chicken, the most affordable entree on the menu. As they ate, their conversation continued. Daniel talked about Lily, her passion for engineering, her endless questions, her determination to understand how things worked. Elena found herself asking more questions drawn into a world so different from her own. She sounds remarkable, Elena said eventually. She is. Her school has a science program, but it's limited. 1 microscope for 30 kids. I do what I can, weekend projects, trips to the museum when I can afford it, but it's not enough. There are scholarship programs for gifted children. Most of them start in middle school. And the ones that don't. Daniel shrugged. They want teacher recommendations and expensive applications. Kids like Lily fall through the cracks. Elena frowned. The Blackwood Foundation has a program for elementary-age girls with STEM aptitude. Does it require teacher recommendations? Yes. Then kids at underfunded schools don't have a real chance. Teachers there are too overwhelmed to write extra paperwork. Elena opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. He was right. She'd never considered how her foundation's selection process filtered out exactly the children who needed help most. That's a valid criticism. It wasn't criticism, just observation. From a handyman. From someone who sees systems most people ignore. Daniel's voice remained calm. That's my job, Miss Blackwood. Identifying problems before they become catastrophes. Sometimes I notice things others miss. Elena set down her fork. You're very unusual, Mr. Carter. Most people in your position would be resentful, or intimidated, or trying to leverage this conversation for personal gain. I don't resent you for having money, and I'm not intimidated by it either. As for leverage, Daniel shrugged. What would be the point? You'll forget about me the moment you leave this restaurant. Our worlds don't intersect. Yet, here we are, intersecting. For one dinner. Tomorrow you'll go back to billion-dollar deals, and I'll go back to fixing boilers. Is that bitterness I hear? No, just reality. Some people are born on third base and think they hit a triple. Others start in the parking lot and fight for every inch. Neither one is wrong, just different. Elena considered this. And you don't want more. I want Lily to have opportunities I didn't have. I want to be someone she's proud of. I want to keep the promises I made to my wife before she died. What promises? Daniel's expression shifted. Softer. Sadder. Sarah made me promise not to let bitterness steal the joy from Lily's life. Or from mine. He paused. Some days that's harder than others. Elena felt that twisting sensation in her chest again. You loved her very much. I still do, always will. And you haven't moved on? It's been 4 years. I've tried. But every time I meet someone I compare them to Sarah, and they always fall short. Daniel smiled ruefully. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe I'm using her memory as an excuse to avoid getting hurt again. That would be understandable. Understandable. But not healthy. Lily deserves a father who's fully present, not one who's still living in the past. Elena didn't know why she said what came next. I've never loved anyone that way. Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her, and Elena felt exposed in a way that money and power couldn't protect against. Never. I thought I did. Once. But what I felt was need not love. Dependence, not partnership. When Marcus betrayed me, it hurt because I'd trusted him, not because I'd truly loved him. There's a difference. I'm realizing there might be. The dinner plates were cleared away. Elena declined dessert. Daniel said he should get home to relieve Lily's babysitter. As they walked toward the exit, Elena felt an unfamiliar reluctance. Thank you for dinner, Daniel said, and for the conversation. It wasn't what I expected. Nor I. Elena paused. You mentioned your friend Dave, the one who arranged your interview, hasn't responded to messages. No, I'm a bit worried. I'm sure there's an explanation. Probably. Outside, the valet brought Elena's Bentley. Daniel prepared to walk toward the subway station. You're taking public transportation? Elena asked. It's efficient. I could give you a ride. Daniel smiled. Thank you, but I like the walk. Gives me time to think. Elena hesitated. A billionaire who commanded boardrooms and shaped markets, hesitating over a handyman who'd refused to surrender a table. For what it's worth, Daniel said, the people who hurt you were wrong about you, and not everyone is like them. Elena felt something crack inside her. Something she'd kept sealed for 15 years. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I know you sat down and talked with me for 2 hours instead of just having me thrown out. That tells me something. Before Elena could respond, Daniel nodded goodbye and walked away. She watched him disappear into the crowd of evening pedestrians. Then she got into her Bentley and directed her driver toward her penthouse. The leather seats were soft. The temperature was perfect. The silence was absolute. Elena stared out the window at the city lights replaying the evening in her mind. A handyman had refused to give up his table, had spoken to her without fear or deference, had looked at her like she was a person, not a position, had told her that building walls kept out everything worth living for. Her phone buzzed. Emails demanding attention, board members requiring responses, problems that only she could solve. Elena silenced the phone and continued staring at the city. For the first time in 15 years, she wondered if she'd built exactly the wrong thing. 3 weeks passed. Daniel didn't hear from Elena Blackwood. He didn't expect to. Women like her didn't maintain contact with men like him. Their worlds had collided for one evening and then separated like ships passing in the night. The job interview never happened. Dave finally called the next morning, apologetic and embarrassed. The position was filled internally before you even got to the restaurant. My contact didn't bother telling me until after. I'm sorry, Dan. I really thought this was your shot. Daniel had swallowed his disappointment and gone back to work. Back to fixing boilers and replacing circuit breakers and keeping buildings running while nobody noticed or cared. Back to Lily. She was the constant. The reason he got up every morning. The reason he kept pushing forward when everything else felt like swimming against the current. Tonight, she sat at their small kitchen table, bent over a model bridge made of popsicle sticks and rubber bands. Her tongue poked out the corner of her mouth, the same expression Sarah used to make when she was concentrating. Dad, come look at this. Daniel set down the dish he was drying and walked over. What have you got? I figured out why it keeps collapsing in the middle. Lily pointed to the center section. The tension is all concentrated in one place, but if I distribute it through multiple points like this. She adjusted several rubber bands. See? Now the stress spreads across the whole structure. Daniel crouched beside her, genuinely impressed. Where'd you learn that? YouTube. And that engineering book you got me from the library sale. She looked up at him with Sarah's eyes. Mrs. Wilson says there's a citywide engineering competition next month. The winner gets a scholarship to summer camp at Northwestern. Can I enter? How much does it cost? Lily's face fell slightly. $75, plus materials for the final model. Daniel did the math in his head. The electric bill was past due. Lily's winter boots were held together with hidden duct tape. His wallet currently held $32 until Friday's paycheck. But this was Lily's dream, and he'd made promises. We'll figure it out, he said. Your brain is getting into that competition if I have to sell my tools to make it happen. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Thank you, Daddy. Daniel held her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. In moments like this, everything else faded. The money problems, the dead-end job, the constant exhaustion. This was why he kept going. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work to find a notice taped to the building's front door. He read it twice, certain he was misunderstanding. Harrison Development was converting the building to luxury micro-apartments. Current tenants had 60 days to either accept the new rental terms, triple the current rates, or vacate the premises. 60 days, through Christmas and New Year's, in the dead of Chicago winter. Daniel's first thought was Mrs. Patterson, 92 years old. She'd lived in apartment 3B for 47 years, raised her children there, lost her husband there. Her entire life was in those walls. He found her in the lobby clutching the same notice with trembling hands. Robert, is this real? They can't just throw us out. Daniel put his hand on her shoulder. I don't know yet, Mrs. P, but I'm going to find out. He spent the next hour calling every number on the notice, getting transferred from one automated system to another, finally reaching a bored-sounding representative who confirmed that yes, the conversion was happening, and yes, tenants who couldn't afford the new rates would need to relocate. But many of these people have lived here for decades, Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Where are they supposed to go? That's not really our concern, sir. The property is being upgraded to meet current market demands. If you have specific questions about the timeline, you can submit them in writing to our legal department. The line went dead. Daniel stood in the basement staring at the ancient boiler he'd nursed through a dozen emergencies. The same boiler Harrison Development had refused to replace despite his repeated warnings about its deteriorating condition. His phone rang. Dave's number. "You saw the notice." Dave's voice was tense. "Just read it." "What the hell is going on?" "Dan, I need to tell you something. Can you meet me?" "Not at the building. Somewhere private." They met at a coffee shop 3 blocks away. Dave looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I handle commercial property insurance for Harrison Development," Dave said, leaning close. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I just processed paperwork that scared the hell out of me." "What kind of paperwork?" "Building material specifications for the renovation. Dan, they're using the same electrical contractor that did the high-rise in River North, the one that burned down last January." Daniel's blood went cold. "The fire that killed 3 people. Same contractor, same suppliers, counterfeit circuit breakers, substandard wiring, the whole deal. Harrison is cutting corners to maximize profits, and they're paying off inspectors to look the other way." "You're sure about this?" "I saw the invoices. The materials they're ordering don't meet code, not even close." Dave's hands were shaking. "I tried raising concerns through official channels. My boss shut me down. Told me Harrison is our biggest client, and I needed to mind my own business." Daniel thought of Mrs. Patterson, the Rodriguez family in 2A with their 3 kids, the Novaks in 4C expecting their first baby in February. "I need to report this. With what evidence Harrison has connections throughout the city, your word against theirs won't mean anything." "Then I'll get evidence. Document everything. Take photos of the materials when they're delivered." Dave grabbed his arm. "Be careful, Dan. These people play dirty. If they find out you're collecting evidence against them, you'll lose a lot more than your job." Daniel thought about Lily, about the promises he'd made to Sarah, about the competition entry fee he still couldn't afford. Then he thought about faulty wiring in walls where children slept, about fires that started in the middle of the night, about Mrs. Patterson trapped in her apartment while flames consumed everything she'd built over 47 years. Some things are worth the risk. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his laptop researching building codes and fire safety regulations. He needed to understand exactly what violations to look for, how to document them properly, and where to report them for maximum impact. His email notification chimed. The sender made him stop breathing. Elena Blackwood. Subject: Blackwood Foundation. STEM Program Information. He stared at the screen for a full minute before opening the message. "Mr. Carter, our conversation prompted me to review the Blackwood Foundation's STEM initiative protocols. You raised valid concerns about our selection process, inadvertently filtering out qualified candidates from under-resourced schools. I've attached information about our program for elementary-age girls with aptitude in engineering and applied sciences. The application deadline has been extended to December 15th. The process has been simplified, though standards remain rigorous. If your daughter is interested, I encourage you to submit an application. Regards, Elena Blackwood, CEO, Blackwood Industries." Daniel read the email 3 times. She'd actually listened, actually considered his criticism, and made changes. The billionaire who could have had him thrown out of a restaurant had instead spent her valuable time restructuring a foundation program because a handyman pointed out its flaws. He opened the attachment. The application was straightforward examples of original projects. A personal essay teacher recommendations now optional rather than required. Lily's bridge design. Her rainwater collection system for the building's community garden. Her endless questions about how things worked and her determination to understand the answers. This was exactly the opportunity she deserved. Daniel began composing a reply. "Miss Blackwood, Thank you for the information about the Blackwood Foundation STEM program. I appreciate your reconsideration of the application process. Lily would be very interested in this opportunity. She was selected today for a citywide engineering competition which aligns well with your program's focus. I've attached photos of her recent projects, including the bridge design and a rainwater collection system she developed for our building's community garden. Regards, Daniel Carter. He hesitated before hitting send. Was he crossing a line? Taking advantage of a brief connection that probably meant nothing to her. But this wasn't about him. This was about Lily. He pressed send. The response came within minutes. Mr. Carter, your daughter's projects show remarkable ingenuity. The rainwater collection system particularly impressed our engineering director. The foundation would like to extend a special invitation for Lily to visit Blackwood Industries research facility this Saturday. Our team is developing environmental sustainability technologies that might interest her, and it would provide an opportunity for preliminary assessment before formal applications close. Please advise if this would be convenient. Elena Blackwood. Daniel stared at the screen, his heart pounding. A personal invitation to tour one of the most advanced research facilities in the country. Access to resources and mentorship he could never provide. A door opening to a world he'd assumed would always be closed to his daughter. He typed his response carefully. Miss Blackwood, thank you for the invitation. Lily would be delighted to visit the research facility this Saturday. However, I must accompany her, as I'm sure you understand. Also, we had previously planned to purchase materials for her competition project that day. Would it be possible to schedule the visit for early afternoon, allowing us to maintain our morning plans? Regards, Daniel Carter. The reply came almost instantly. 11:30 a.m. would work for our team. A car will collect you both at 11:15. Please provide your address. And of course you would accompany her. She's 9. Elena. Daniel smiled at the slight edge in her final sentence. He'd apparently offended her by implying she might have thought otherwise. He sent their address, then sat back in his chair trying to process the whirlwind of the past few hours. His building was being converted. His neighbors were being displaced. A dangerous developer was cutting corners that could kill people. And somehow in the middle of it all, a billionaire was opening doors for his daughter that he'd never dreamed possible. The contrast was almost too much to comprehend. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures just above freezing. Daniel and Lily spent the morning at the art supply store carefully selecting materials for her competition bridge. She was vibrating with excitement, not just about the supplies, but about what came after. Dad, do you think they'll have real 3D printers? Mrs. Wilson showed us videos, but I've never seen one in person. I honestly don't know what they'll have, sweetheart, but I'm sure it'll be impressive. At precisely 11:15, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside their building. Not a taxi or rideshare, a luxury vehicle with tinted windows and a uniformed driver who opened the door with formal courtesy. Lily's eyes went wide. Is this for us? Like in the movies? Apparently so. The interior smelled of leather and something subtle and expensive. Technology was integrated into every surface. Daniel noticed a small gift bag on the seat with Lily's name on it. May I? She asked, fingers already reaching. Go ahead. Inside was an engineering kit, not a toy, but professional-grade precision tools scaled for smaller hands. A card attached read simply, "For future innovations. EB." Lily examined each tool with reverent fascination. Dad, these are real instruments, like the ones actual engineers use. Daniel felt the familiar tug between gratitude and discomfort. This gift probably cost more than he earned in a week. But seeing Lily's face, the wonder, the recognition that someone believed in her potential, made his reservations feel small and petty. The car glided through Chicago traffic toward the gleaming Blackwood Industries headquarters downtown. Daniel had passed this building countless times without truly seeing it. 40 stories of glass and steel that reflected the sky. The driver escorted them through a private entrance bypassing the main lobby. An elevator whisked them to the 38th floor, opening directly into a laboratory space that made Lily gasp. Scientists in white coats moved between workstations, featuring technology Daniel had only seen in magazines. Holographic displays showed rotating molecular structures. 3D printers constructed intricate components. An artificial ecosystem occupied an entire glass-walled chamber. "Dad," Lily whispered, clutching his hand. "Look at everything." Elena Blackwood appeared from a connecting doorway. The weekend hadn't diminished her commanding presence, though she'd exchanged her business suit for dark slacks and a cashmere sweater. Her hair fell in loose waves rather than her usual severe style. She looked almost human. "Mr. Carter, Lily, welcome to Blackwood Industries." Lily straightened, her shyness momentarily overcome by excitement. "Thank you for inviting us, Miss Blackwood. And for the tools. They're incredible." "You're welcome. I'm told you have exceptional spatial reasoning skills. Our engineers were impressed by your rainwater collection system." "Really?" Lily's face lit up. "Dad helped with the flow calculations, but I designed the filtration method myself." "A productive collaboration, then." Elena gestured toward the laboratory. "Would you like to see what we're working on? Some of our environmental engineers are developing water purification systems that might interest you." For the next 2 hours, Elena led them through the facility, introducing researchers who treated Lily not as a child to be humored, but as a young colleague. They explained concepts in accessible terms, asked her opinions, and listened when she offered suggestions. Daniel watched in amazement as his daughter conversed with scientists about tensile strength and load distribution and molecular bonds. She belonged here. In a way, he never could. She belonged in this world of ideas and innovation. But what struck him most was Elena. She listened to Lily with genuine attention, asked questions that expanded rather than simplified, engaged with a 9-year-old's perspective as if it actually mattered. This was not the cold billionaire from the restaurant. This was someone else entirely. During lunch in an elegant conference room, Elena turned her analytical gaze on Daniel. "Your daughter has impressive abilities. Her spatial reasoning is unusually developed for her age. She gets that from her mother." Daniel watched Lily examining a 3D printed model across the room. Sarah could look at a problem from angles most people never considered. "And from you, I suspect. Your work requires similar skills, understanding how systems interconnect, identifying failure points." The observation surprised him. "Different applications of the same principles, I guess." "Exactly." Elena studied him with unexpected intensity. "Tell me about your building situation." Daniel's guard went up immediately. "What do you mean?" "I make it my business to know about significant real estate developments in the city. Harrison Development's plans for your property have come to my attention." "How?" "I have resources and interests." She lowered her voice slightly. "I'm also aware that the materials they're sourcing for electrical upgrades are potentially dangerous." Daniel stared at her. "You know about that? I know that Harrison has used questionable contractors before. I know that safety violations have occurred at their other properties, and I know that without proper documentation, nothing will be done about it. I'm working on documentation. With what resources Harrison has connections throughout the city, inspectors on their payroll, politicians in their pocket. Your word against theirs won't accomplish anything." Daniel felt defensive anger rising. "So what am I supposed to do? Just let them install faulty wiring in a building where children sleep?" "No." Elena's voice was calm. "You're supposed to let me help." "Why would you do that?" "Because I detest inefficiency. Because safety regulations exist for reasons. And because—" She paused, something shifting in her expression. "Because you were right about something. That night at the restaurant. About walls keeping out everything worth living for." The admission hung between them, unexpected and raw. Before Daniel could respond, Lily returned excitedly, describing something she'd seen across the room. The moment passed, but something had shifted. As they prepared to leave, Elena walked them to the elevator herself. Lily, our foundation director, would like to speak with you briefly about your competition project. As Lily moved toward the friendly-looking woman waiting nearby, Elena turned to Daniel, her voice lowered for privacy. I can provide delivery schedules for Harrison's building materials, security access information, contact details for a city council member with oversight of building safety regulations. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Except your expertise. The documentation will require your practical knowledge to be credible. You understand building systems in ways my lawyers don't. Daniel studied her face, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda, the transaction disguised as generosity. He found nothing but directness. Why are you really doing this? Elena was quiet for a moment. You asked me once if I had anything that made the struggle worthwhile. I've been thinking about that question. And I don't have an answer yet, but watching you with your daughter today. She stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. You have something I don't understand, something I want to understand. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to him. I'd need to be directly involved, Daniel said. This affects my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson has lived there 47 years. The Rodriguez family has 3 kids under 10. They deserve safe housing, not profits built on dangerous shortcuts. Agreed. You'll have complete access to everything I can provide. And no one can know you're involved. Harrison can't trace any of this back to you. Elena's smile was thin, but genuine. Mr. Carter, I've been hiding my involvement in things for 15 years. This is hardly my first covert operation. The elevator arrived. Lily returned, bubbling with excitement about her conversation with the foundation director. As they descended, Daniel caught Elena watching them through the closing doors. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes stayed fixed on them until they disappeared from view. In the car heading home, Lily talked nonstop about everything she'd seen: the 3D printers, the wind tunnel, the scientists who'd listened to her ideas like they actually mattered. Dad, do you think Miss Blackwood likes you? The question came out of nowhere. What makes you ask that? The way she looked at you, like she was trying to figure out a really interesting puzzle. Lily shrugged. Plus, she keeps helping us. And you keep trying not to accept the help. It's like that movie we watched about Pride and Prejudice. Daniel laughed despite himself. I think Miss Blackwood is just being kind, Abs. If you say so. Lily's tone carried exaggerated skepticism. But she smiled different when she talked to you. The real kind of smile, not the polite kind. Out of the mouths of babes. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel's phone buzzed with an email. No subject line, no greeting. Just a document attachment and 3 words. It's all there. He opened the attachment and found everything Elena had promised. Delivery schedules, access codes, contact information, even floor plans showing where the dangerous materials were likely to be installed. She'd moved fast, faster than he'd expected. He started making a plan. The next morning, Dave called in a panic. Harrison Development just fired me as their insurance broker. Word is, they found out I was asking questions about their material suppliers. Dave's voice was shaking. Watch your back, Dan. These people play dirty. The warning only reinforced what Daniel already knew. Without Elena's resources, his efforts to protect the building's residents would be futile against Harrison's political connections and financial power. With her support, he had a fighting chance. His phone buzzed again. Elena. Documentation timeline, Daniel typed back. Starting collection this week. Delivery scheduled for Thursday. Her response came immediately. Good. Keep me informed. And Mr. Carter, be careful. Harrison's legal team is more dangerous than their contractors. Daniel looked at the message for a long moment. Somewhere along the line, the billionaire who'd tried to steal his table had become his ally. Maybe even something more complicated than that. He didn't know what to call it yet. But he knew it was changing everything. Thursday came faster than Daniel expected. He positioned himself in the basement before dawn, tucked behind the old boiler where he could see the service entrance without being noticed. His phone was fully charged. His camera app was ready. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The delivery truck arrived at 6:47 a.m. Daniel watched through a gap in the machinery as workers unloaded boxes of electrical supplies. He photographed everything: the shipping labels, the manufacturer logos, the serial numbers on the circuit breakers. When one worker stepped away for a cigarette, Daniel moved closer, capturing clear images of the components themselves. His training kicked in immediately. These weren't legitimate parts. The UL certification stamps were slightly off-center. The wire gauges were thinner than code required. The circuit breaker housings had the telltale seams of cheap overseas knockoffs. He'd seen materials like this before. In the aftermath, reports from the River North fire. By the time the workers finished unloading, Daniel had documented 17 separate violations. He retreated to his apartment to organize the evidence, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and grim satisfaction. His phone buzzed. Elena. Status. Daniel typed back. Got everything. 17 violations documented. These materials are identical to what caused the River North fire. Her response was immediate. I'm arranging a meeting with Councilwoman Chen. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. My attorney will accompany you. Don't speak to anyone about this until then. Daniel stared at the message. She was moving faster than he'd expected, faster than he'd asked for. Part of him wanted to resist, to handle this himself, to maintain some illusion of independence. But this wasn't about his pride. This was about Mrs. Patterson, the Rodriguez kids, everyone who slept in this building, trusting that the walls around them were safe. He typed back, understood. Thank you. Her reply came after a longer pause than usual. Be careful today. Harrison will notice the missing inventory records eventually. The warning proved prophetic. At 4:30 that afternoon, Harrison's site manager showed up at Daniel's door. A thick-necked man named Kowalski, with suspicious eyes and a barely concealed sneer. Carter, we need to talk about some inventory discrepancies. Daniel kept his expression neutral. What kind of discrepancies? Someone was in the basement this morning during the delivery. Security cameras picked up movement near the service entrance. I was checking the boiler. Same thing I do every morning. With your phone out, taking pictures. Daniel's stomach tightened, but he didn't flinch. I document equipment conditions. It's part of my job. You want to see my maintenance logs? Kowalski studied him for a long moment. Mr. Harrison wants to see you tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. His office downtown. I have another appointment tomorrow morning. Cancel it. Kowalski's voice dropped to something almost threatening. Mr. Harrison doesn't like being kept waiting, and he really doesn't like employees who stick their noses where they don't belong. After Kowalski left, Daniel sat on his couch and forced himself to breathe. They knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be suspicious. Tomorrow's meeting with the councilwoman had just become a race against time. He called Elena. She answered on the first ring. What happened? Harrison's site manager just paid me a visit. They know someone was photographing the delivery this morning. Silence on the line. Then, can they prove it was you? Security cameras caught movement. They're suspicious but not certain. Then we move faster. I'm contacting Councilwoman Chen's office now. We'll push the meeting to first thing tomorrow, 8 a.m. instead of 10. Harrison wants to see me at 8. Then you'll be unavailable for his meeting. By the time he realizes you're not coming, you'll already be presenting evidence to a city official with oversight authority. Daniel closed his eyes. Elena, if this doesn't work, it will work. Her voice carried absolute certainty. I don't invest in failing strategies, Mr. Carter, and I've invested considerably in this one. The line went dead. Daniel spent the evening organizing his documentation, printing backup copies, and trying not to think about what would happen if everything fell apart. Lily noticed his tension at dinner. Dad, you're not eating. Just tired, sweetheart. Is this about the building? The notices that made Mrs. Patterson cry? Daniel looked at his daughter. Sarah's eyes, Sarah's perception, Sarah's inability to let things go unaddressed. Yes, I'm trying to fix it. Will it work? I hope so. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom always said hope wasn't a strategy. She said you had to have a plan and work the plan, and then hope filled in the gaps. Daniel felt his throat tighten. When did she tell you that? When she was sick. She said she was working her plan to get better, and hope would fill in the gaps. Lily's voice wavered slightly. It didn't work for her, but maybe it'll work for you. Daniel pulled his daughter into his arms and held her tight. She was 9 years old and already knew too much about how the world could break your heart. I've got a plan, he whispered into her hair. And I've got people helping me. Good people. Like Miss Blackwood. Yes, like Miss Blackwood. The next morning, Daniel arrived at City Hall at 7:45. Elena's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Winters, was already waiting in the lobby. She looked exactly like someone who charged $500 an hour, polished, confident, and faintly terrifying. Mr. Carter, I've reviewed your documentation. It's impressive work for someone without legal training. I know building systems. I know when things are wrong. That's evident. She handed him a folder. Councilwoman Chen has oversight of the Building Safety Commission. She's also received significant campaign contributions from Harrison Development. We need to frame this in terms she can't ignore. Meaning, political risk. If these materials are installed and people die, anyone who knew and did nothing becomes liable politically and potentially legally. We're not asking her to be a hero. We're giving her a reason to protect herself. The meeting began at 8:02. Councilwoman Chen listened with a carefully neutral expression as Daniel presented his evidence, the photographs, the manufacturer comparisons, the documentation of previous violations at Harrison Properties. Catherine supplemented his presentation with legal context, citing specific code violations and referencing the River North fire investigation that had implicated similar materials. When Daniel finished, Chen was silent for a long moment. These are serious allegations, Mr. Carter. They're not allegations. They're documented facts. Facts that Harrison Development will dispute. They have excellent attorneys. They also have a pattern of endangering lives for profit. Daniel kept his voice steady. 3 people died in River North. The same contractor, the same suppliers. How many have to die before someone takes action? Catherine leaned forward. Councilwoman, my client isn't asking you to take down a major developer. He's asking you to order a safety inspection. If the materials meet code, Harrison has nothing to worry about. If they don't... She paused meaningfully. Well, I'm sure you'd rather discover that before the fire than after. Chen's eyes flickered between them. Daniel could almost see her calculating political outcomes, weighing risks against benefits, measuring the cost of action against the cost of inaction. Finally, she picked up her phone. Get me the building inspection director. Tell him it's urgent. 20 minutes later, they had a commitment. Emergency inspection within 48 hours. Full documentation of all materials. Independent verification by a certified engineer. As they left Chen's office, Catherine allowed herself a small smile. That went better than expected. Chen is more vulnerable than I thought. She's up for re-election next year and doesn't need a safety scandal. What happens now? Now we wait for the inspection, and you. She handed him a business card. You might want to start looking for new employment. Harrison isn't going to take this lying down. Daniel checked his phone. 7 missed calls from Harrison Development. 3 voicemails, each more threatening than the last. He deleted them without listening to the third. When he got back to the building, Harrison himself was waiting in the lobby. The man was smaller than Daniel expected, barely 5'8", with the soft hands of someone who'd never done physical labor. But his eyes were cold, and the 2 men flanking him looked like they'd done plenty of physical labor, most of it unpleasant. Mr. Carter? Harrison's voice was deceptively pleasant. You missed our meeting this morning. I had other obligations. Yes, I know. My sources at City Hall are quite reliable. The pleasantness vanished. You've made a serious mistake. I reported safety violations through appropriate channels. That's not a mistake, it's my job. Your job is to maintain this building, not to interfere with business decisions above your pay grade. My job is to keep people safe. The materials you're installing are dangerous. They violate code. They'll fail. Those are opinions. What I have are facts. Harrison stepped closer. Fact, you're fired effective immediately. Fact, you have until Friday to vacate your apartment. Fact, I have relationships with every property management company in Chicago. One call from me, and you'll never work in this industry again. Daniel felt the threat land like a physical blow. Not just unemployment, but blacklisting. Not just losing his apartment, but losing his ability to provide for Lily. Everything he'd built, everything he'd promised Sarah he'd protect. You can fire me. Daniel said, his voice steady, despite the fear coursing through him. But you can't stop the inspection, and you can't change what those materials are. Harrison smiled, a cold, thin expression that didn't reach his eyes. We'll see about that. I've dealt with inspectors before, and crusaders like you. He shook his head. They always break eventually. The only question is how much they lose before they do. He turned and walked out, his men following close behind. Daniel stood alone in the lobby, the weight of consequences settling over him like a physical force. Fired. Blacklisted. Homeless in 5 days with a 9-year-old daughter who was counting on him. He pulled out his phone and stared at Elena's contact information. His thumb hovered over the call button. Pride said to handle this himself. Pride said he'd already taken too much help, already become too dependent on someone whose world was nothing like his own. But Pride didn't pay rent. Pride didn't keep Lily safe. Pride didn't find a new apartment in December, when every landlord in Chicago would soon be warned against him. He pressed call. Elena answered immediately. What happened? I'm fired, blacklisted. I have until Friday to vacate the apartment. The words came out flat, stripped of emotion. Harrison has connections everywhere. No one in the industry will touch me. Silence on the line. Then, where is Lily right now? At school. Good. Go pick her up early. Take her somewhere safe. A friend's house, anywhere away from the building. I'll handle the rest. Elena? I said I'll handle it. Her voice carried the same absolute certainty he'd heard before, but beneath it was something else. Something that sounded almost like anger. Harrison just made this personal. 3 hours later, Daniel received a text with an address on Wellington Avenue and a message, vacant 2-bedroom. Yours for as long as needed. Lily's school is 12 blocks away. He stared at the message, pride and necessity warring inside him. Another text followed. It's not charity. It's a practical solution to a temporary problem. It's what someone would do for a friend. Friend. The word hung in the air, not quite accurate, not entirely wrong. Daniel typed back, I'll pay rent. Her response came quickly. We can discuss terms later. For now, focus on getting Lily settled. The next 2 days blurred together. Daniel packed their apartment with grim efficiency, trying to shield Lily from the worst of the upheaval. She was perceptive enough to know something was wrong, resilient enough not to ask too many questions. Mrs. Patterson caught him in the hallway on his last trip down. Robert told me what you did. Her eyes were wet. What you sacrificed. It's not over yet, Mrs. P. The inspection is tomorrow. But you've lost everything. Not everything. Daniel thought of Lily safe in their new apartment, of Elena moving mountains behind the scenes, of the councilwoman who'd finally taken action. I've still got what matters. Mrs. Patterson hugged him, a frail embrace that communicated more than words could have. Sarah would be proud of you, she whispered. Daniel couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. The inspection happened on December 18th. Daniel wasn't allowed on site, but Elena kept him updated through a steady stream of texts. 9:15 a.m. Inspectors arrived, Harrison's attorney already objecting. 10:30 a.m. Electrical materials being examined, Harrison claiming supplier error. 11:45 a.m. My engineer is here. Dr. Alan Nakamura. Congressional testimony experience. They can't dismiss his findings. 12:30 p.m. 17 violations confirmed, identical to River North materials. 2:15 p.m. Stop work order issued. Harrison's renovation suspended until full compliance verified. Daniel read the final message 3 times before it sank in. He'd won. Against Harrison's money connections and influence, he'd won. His phone rang. Elena. How does it feel? She asked. Winning. I don't know yet. Ask me when Mrs. Patterson can stay in her home. Elena was quiet for a moment. The renovation will proceed eventually. Harrison will hire legitimate contractors, install proper materials, and continue the conversion. I know. But the people living there now will be safe, and maybe some of them will find affordable housing before the new rents kick in. You really don't think in terms of yourself, do you? I think in terms of what I can live with. What I can explain to Lily someday when she asks what kind of man her father was. Another pause. Then, my head of engineering has an opening. Practical systems consultant for our facilities division. It starts January 2nd. Daniel closed his eyes. Elena, it's not charity. It's a job you're qualified for. Better salary than you were making. Benefits that will cover Lily's braces and then some. Her voice softened slightly. And it would mean you don't have to leave Chicago. Don't have to uproot Lily from her school, her friends, her life. Why are you doing all this? The question that had been building since their first dinner together finally emerged. Elena didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was different than he'd ever heard it, uncertain, almost vulnerable. I told you about my walls, about keeping everything and everyone at a distance. I've been doing it for 15 years, telling myself it was strength, telling myself it was necessary. She paused. Then I met a man who refused to give up his table, who spoke to me without fear or calculation, who looked at me like I was a person instead of a position. Another pause. And I realized that maybe the walls weren't protecting me. Maybe they were just keeping me alone. Daniel didn't know what to say. I'm not good at this, Elena continued. At connection, at trust, at whatever this is between us. But I'm trying to learn, and I think... She stopped, then started again. I think you might be the right person to learn with. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and real, and terrifying in its honesty. The apartment on Wellington, Daniel finally said. I'll pay market rent. We can discuss it. And the job. I won't accept it unless I earn it. You've already earned it. 10 times over. Daniel smiled, despite everything. You're not used to people negotiating with you. I'm not used to people treating me like a normal person. It's unsettling. Get used to it. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Elena laughed, a genuine sound, warm and unexpected. I'll try. December 21st brought Chicago's worst blizzard in decades. Daniel and Lily were in their new Wellington Avenue apartment when the power went out. Wind howled through the streets. Snow piled higher by the hour. The temperature plummeted toward dangerous lows. They made an adventure of it. Blanket forts, camping lanterns, soup heated on a small propane stove Daniel had packed in their emergency kit. It's like we're explorers in the Arctic, Lily declared, wrapped in layers of blankets. Exactly. The most important thing is staying warm and staying together. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Daniel approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. His heart stopped. Elena Blackwood stood in the hallway, snowflakes melting in her hair, her face flushed from cold. He opened the door. What are you doing here? The building's backup generator failed. Management can't get anyone here until morning. She held up a bag. I brought supplies. You drove through a blizzard to bring us supplies. I have a vehicle equipped for these conditions. She glanced past him, seeing Lily's blanket fort glowing with lantern light. I see you're already well prepared. Dad always keeps emergency supplies, Lily called out. He says it's better to have things you don't need than need things you don't have. Elena's expression softened in a way Daniel had never seen before. A practical philosophy. Please come in, Daniel said, stepping aside. You shouldn't drive anymore tonight. Elena hesitated, a billionaire CEO standing in a hallway, suddenly uncertain whether she belonged. I don't want to impose. You drove through a historic blizzard to check on us. I think we're past worrying about imposing. Lily appeared at Daniel's side. Did you really drive through the snow just to make sure we were okay? Elena looked at the girl. Sarah's eyes, Sarah's directness, and something in her face cracked open. I was worried about you both. The admission came out quiet, almost surprised. I couldn't focus on anything else. Then you should definitely stay. Lily grabbed Elena's hand with the unself-conscious directness of childhood. We're having a sleepover anyway. There's room in the blanket fort. Daniel watched his daughter pull one of America's most powerful CEOs into their makeshift shelter, and something in his chest expanded, something that felt dangerously like hope. The three of them spent the evening together. They ate soup and played cards, and talked about everything and nothing. Lily showed Elena her bridge design for the competition. Elena offered suggestions that made Lily's eyes light up. You really understand engineering, Lily said with wonder. I was very interested in it when I was your age, before I discovered that algorithms could be more profitable. Elena smiled. I think I envied you a little when I saw your projects. You have someone who encourages your interests, someone who believes in you. Dad believes in everyone. Elena glanced at Daniel. Yes, I've noticed that about him. As the evening wore on, Lily's eyes began to droop. Daniel carried her to the bedroom, tucking her in with practiced care. When he returned, Elena was sitting in the blanket fort alone, her corporate armor completely shed. She's remarkable, Elena said quietly. Her resilience, her intelligence, her emotional capacity. You've done an extraordinary job raising her. I can't take all the credit. Sarah built the foundation. And you've maintained it, strengthened it. That's not nothing. Daniel settled across from her, the lantern light casting soft shadows on both their faces. Can I ask you something? Elena nodded. Why did you really come tonight? You could have called, sent someone else. A dozen options that didn't involve driving through a blizzard. Elena was silent for a long moment. Because when I thought about you and Lily alone in a powerless building on the coldest night of the year, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't focus on work. Couldn't pretend it didn't matter. She met his eyes. Because somewhere along the line you started to matter. Both of you. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to be someone who lets things matter. Daniel reached across the small space between them and took her hand. You learn, one day at a time, one choice at a time, same as everything else. Elena looked down at their joined hands, her manicured fingers intertwined with his calloused ones. Two different worlds touching. I'm scared, she admitted. I haven't let anyone close in 15 years. I don't know if I remember how. You're here, in a blanket fort, during a blizzard, with a 9-year-old who just conscripted you into a card game. Daniel smiled. I think you're doing better than you realize. Elena laughed softly. This isn't how I expected tonight to go. This isn't how I expected any of this to go. 3 weeks ago, I was a maintenance supervisor who couldn't afford his daughter's braces. Now I'm sitting in an apartment you provided, preparing for a job you offered, having survived a battle you helped me win. Do you resent it? The help? Daniel considered the question seriously. I resented it at first. felt like charity, like I was failing at being self-sufficient. He squeezed her hand gently. But then I realized something. Self-sufficiency isn't about refusing help. It's about being someone worth helping. About earning the investment people make in you. And have you earned it? I'd like to think so. I guess time will tell. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the wind howl outside. The lantern flickered. Elena's eyes began to close. "You should sleep," Daniel said. "Take the couch. I'll get blankets." "I haven't had an actual sleepover since college," Elena murmured, already half asleep. "Dormitory floor. Cheaper than heating the apartment." Another glimpse behind the armor. Another reminder that the billionaire had once been someone else entirely. Daniel covered her with blankets and retreated to the armchair, watching her sleep in the dim light. Her face was softer in sleep, younger somehow. The sharpness that defined her public persona completely absent. She'd driven through a blizzard to check on them. Had admitted she was scared. Had let herself be vulnerable in a way that probably terrified her. And somewhere in the quiet of the storm-wrapped night, Daniel realized that he'd stopped thinking of Elena Blackwood as a billionaire, or a benefactor, or even a complicated ally. He'd started thinking of her as something far more dangerous. Someone he might be falling in love with. Morning light cut through the windows like a blade. Daniel woke to find the apartment transformed. Sunlight reflecting off pristine snow made everything blindingly bright. The power was still out, but the world outside had gone quiet. The storm had passed. He stretched in the armchair where he'd spent the night, his neck protesting the awkward angle. Elena was still asleep on the couch, her face peaceful in a way he'd never seen during her waking hours. Without the sharp intelligence animating her features, she looked almost ordinary, almost approachable, almost like someone he could imagine waking up next to. He pushed the thought away and went to check on Lily. Her bedroom door was already open. The bed was empty. Daniel's heart lurched for half a second before he heard voices from the main room. He moved quietly toward the sound and stopped at the edge of the hallway. Lily and Elena sat at the dining table, bent over the bridge model that Lily had been working on for weeks. Elena was pointing at the center section, her voice low and animated. "See here. The load is concentrating at a single point. That's why it keeps failing under asymmetrical stress. So I need to redistribute the tension." Lily was practically vibrating with focus. Like spread it across multiple supports instead of just the main beam. Exactly. If you add secondary cables here and here. Elena traced the positions with her finger. The stress disperses through the entire structure instead of overwhelming one point. That's so obvious now that you say it. Lily grabbed her pencil and started sketching modifications. I can't believe I didn't see it before. Sometimes we're too close to a problem to see the solution. Fresh eyes help. Daniel watched them for another moment, something warm and complicated expanding in his chest. His daughter and the billionaire CEO heads together over a 9-year-old's engineering project, speaking as equals. He cleared his throat softly. Both of them looked up. Lily's face broke into a grin. Elena's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to read. Dad, Miss Blackwood figured out why my bridge keeps breaking. I heard. Daniel moved into the room. You two have been busy. She woke up early and saw me working on it. Lily was already back to sketching. She knows so much about structural engineering. Did you know she wanted to be an engineer when she was my age? I didn't know that. Daniel's eyes met Elena's. She looked away first, a faint flush coloring her cheeks. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. The roads will be cleared enough by now, and I have... Stay for breakfast. The words came out before Daniel could stop them. We're having pancakes. It's a post-blizzard tradition. Elena hesitated. He could see her instinct to retreat warring with something else, something that wanted to stay. I don't want to impose further. You slept in a blanket fort and fixed my daughter's engineering project. I think we're past worrying about imposing. Lily looked up from her sketching. Please stay, Miss Blackwood. Dad makes really good pancakes. And you haven't told me about the wind tunnel yet. You said they have a wind tunnel at your company that tests aerodynamic designs. Elena's resistance crumbled visibly. I suppose pancakes would be acceptable. Daniel smiled and moved toward the small kitchen gathering ingredients. Behind him, he heard Lily launch into questions about wind resistance and airflow patterns and Elena's patient detailed responses. The morning light seemed warmer somehow. They ate pancakes at the small table, Lily talking non-stop about her competition plans, while Daniel and Elena exchanged glances over her head. Something had shifted between them during the night. The walls that defined their interactions had thinned, become permeable in ways that felt both dangerous and inevitable. After breakfast, Elena insisted on helping with dishes. They stood side by side at the sink, she washing, he drying, while Lily worked on her bridge modifications in the living room. Thank you, Elena said quietly, for letting me stay. Thank you for coming, for caring enough to come. I surprised myself. She handed him a plate. I'm not usually impulsive. Everything I do is calculated, measured, evaluated for risk and return. And last night I got in my car and drove through a blizzard without thinking about any of that, without calculating anything. She paused, staring at the soapy water. It was terrifying. Terrifying good or terrifying bad? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet. I think that's what makes it terrifying. Daniel set down the plate he was drying and turned to face her. She kept her eyes on the dishes. Elena, look at me. She did reluctantly. Her expression was more vulnerable than he'd ever seen it. You don't have to figure everything out right now, he said. You don't have to know what this is or what it means or where it's going. That's not how life works, at least not the parts that matter. I built $1 billion company on knowing exactly what things are and what they mean and where they're going. And how's that working out for you? In the parts that matter. The question landed softly but heavily. Elena turned back to the dishes. Not well, she admitted. Not well at all. An hour later, Elena left. The roads were passable now, plows having worked through the night. She gathered her coat and bag with the brisk efficiency that characterized everything she did, but paused at the door. Lily's competition is in 4 days. Will her bridge be ready? We're close. The modifications you suggested this morning should solve the stability issues. Good. Elena hesitated, then added, I'd like to attend, if that's acceptable. You want to come to a 4th grade engineering competition? I want to see her succeed. Is that so strange? Daniel smiled. Not strange at all. We'd be happy to have you there. Something in Elena's expression softened. Then I'll be there. She left without saying goodbye, which Daniel was beginning to realize was just how she operated. Emotional transitions were difficult for her. She handled them by not handling them by moving forward before the moment could become awkward or demanding. He watched through the window as her car pulled away, then went back to help Lily with her bridge. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Daniel started his new position at Blackwood Industries on January 2nd, but Elena had arranged for him to work remotely until after Lily's competition. He spent his mornings reviewing facility schematics and emergency protocols, his afternoons helping Lily perfect her design, and his evenings trying not to think too much about what was developing between him and a woman who was so far out of his league that the concept of league became meaningless. Elena texted regularly. Brief business-like messages about his work orientation, slightly less brief messages about Lily's competition preparations, and occasionally late-at-night messages that weren't about anything at all. How was your day? Fine. Yours complicated. Board meeting ran long. Marcus is being difficult. Marcus, her ex-fiancé, her COO. The man who had betrayed her and somehow remained in her orbit, a constant reminder of why she'd built her walls so high. Daniel typed, You don't have to keep him around, you know. Just because he's useful doesn't mean you owe him access to your life. A long pause before her response. It's more complicated than that. It usually is, but complicated doesn't mean impossible. Another pause. Then, when did you become so wise? Mr. Carter comes with the job. Building maintenance teaches you a lot about what's load-bearing and what's just taking up space. Her response was a laughing emoji, the first one he'd ever seen her use. It felt like a small victory. Christmas arrived with unexpected brightness. Daniel had worried about making the holiday special in their new apartment with their lives still in transition and so much uncertainty ahead. But Lily seemed to understand that circumstances were different this year, and she adapted with the resilience that continued to amaze him. They exchanged modest gifts in the morning books for her, a new tool set for him, then spent the day watching holiday movies and baking cookies from Sarah's old recipe. The apartment filled with the smell of chocolate chips and cinnamon, and for a few hours everything felt almost normal. A delivery arrived mid-afternoon. Daniel opened the door to find a uniformed courier holding two packages. One was addressed to Lily, the other to him. Both bore the Blackwood Industries logo. Lily tore into hers with barely contained excitement. Inside was an advanced engineering kit, precision instruments, specialized materials, a miniature wind tunnel for testing aerodynamic designs. "Dad," her voice was hushed with awe. "This is professional equipment, like real professional equipment." Daniel opened his package more slowly. A bottle of rare single malt scotch rested inside, accompanied by a handwritten note on simple cream-colored paper. "Merry Christmas to you both. Thank you for the blanket fort memories. E." He stared at the note for a long moment, tracing the precise handwriting. Elena Blackwood had taken time from her Christmas, assuming she celebrated Christmas, assuming she wasn't simply working through the holiday like she probably did every other day to select gifts that were thoughtful rather than merely expensive. The engineering kit was exactly what Lily needed for her competition preparations. The scotch was a brand Daniel had mentioned once in passing during one of their late-night text conversations. She'd been paying attention, more than he'd realized. He took out his phone and typed, "Thank you." The gifts were perfect. Her response came quickly. "You're welcome. I hope I'm not overstepping." "You're not. Lily is already testing bridge designs in the mini wind tunnel." A pause. Then, "Good. I'll see you both on Wednesday." The competition was in 2 days. Daniel found himself counting down the hours. December 27th arrived with clear skies and temperatures that felt almost warm after the blizzard. Daniel helped Lily pack her bridge model with painstaking care, triple-checking every component before they left for the Museum of Science and Industry. The competition hall buzzed with nervous energy. Dozens of young engineers' girls from schools across the city had gathered to present their designs. Parents hovered anxiously. Teachers offered last-minute encouragement. Judges circulated with clipboards and serious expressions. Daniel found their assigned station and helped Lily set up her display. She was vibrating with nervous energy, adjusting her presentation boards repeatedly, straightening materials that didn't need straightening. "Hey." He crouched beside her. "Remember what Mom used to say before your piano recitals?" Lily smiled despite her nerves. "Butterflies mean you care enough to be nervous. Just make sure they're flying in formation." "Exactly. Your bridge is amazing." Or, "You've worked incredibly hard. No matter what happens today, I'm incredibly proud of you." "What if I forget something during my presentation?" Then you'll pause, take a breath, and remember, the judges aren't here to trick you. They want to see your ideas, your thinking, your passion. You have all of those in abundance. Lily nodded her shoulders, relaxing slightly. "Thanks, Dad." "Always, sweetheart." The competition opened to the public at noon. Judges began circulating among the projects, asking questions and taking notes. Daniel stayed close, but not hovering, letting Lily handle the interactions while he watched from a few feet away. She was brilliant. When judges asked about her tension distribution system, she explained the principles with clarity and confidence. When they questioned her material choices, she defended them with data from her testing. When they challenged her assumptions, she acknowledged the limitations, while demonstrating that she'd considered alternatives. Sarah would have been so proud. At precisely 2:15, Elena appeared. She was still in her business suit, clearly having come directly from a meeting, and her presence immediately drew attention. Several parents whispered recognition as she moved through the hall. A few judges did double takes, but Elena's attention was fixed entirely on Lily's station. "Miss Blackwood." Lily's face lit up. "You came?" "I said I would." Elena approached the display table, her sharp eyes scanning the setup with genuine interest. "How has the judging gone?" "Really well, I think. They asked a lot about the tension distribution, and I explained what you showed me about the secondary cable system." "Did they seem satisfied?" One of them said it was the most innovative approach he'd seen from a fourth grader in 15 years. Lily was practically glowing, and another one asked if I'd been studying structural engineering formally. Elena smiled a real smile, warm and proud. "That doesn't surprise me at all." She turned to Daniel, her expression shifting to something more complex. "Mr. Carter." "Miss Blackwood." He couldn't help smiling at the formality. "Thank you for coming. I wouldn't have missed it." The final judging round began at 3:30. Each finalist had 5 minutes to present their project to the complete panel. Lily was third in line. Daniel watched from the audience, his hands clenched tight with nervous energy. Beside him, Elena sat perfectly still, but he could feel tension radiating from her. When Lily took her position before the judges, something shifted in the room. The girl who'd been nervous that morning was gone. In her place stood a young engineer, who knew her work, believed in her ideas, and wasn't afraid to defend them. She explained her design with precision and passion. She demonstrated the tension distribution system with clear examples. She answered questions with poise that belied her 9 years. And when she applied progressive weight to different sections of her model, showing how it handled asymmetrical stress without failing, the judges exchanged impressed glances. Daniel released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Elena's hand found his in the darkness, squeezing once before letting go. The contact lasted barely a second, but it sent electricity through his entire body. The award ceremony began an hour later. Honorable mentions were announced first, then third place. Lily's name wasn't called. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Had he misjudged? Had the judges not seen what he saw in her work? Second place, the head judge announced, goes to Lily Carter for her innovative tension distribution bridge design. The hall erupted in applause. Lily's face transformed with disbelief and joy as she walked forward to accept her certificate and scholarship award. Daniel was on his feet before he realized he'd moved, clapping so hard his palms stung. Beside him, Elena was also standing, applauding with an intensity that seemed to surprise even her. Lily returned to them, clutching her certificate, her eyes bright with tears that wouldn't quite fall. "I did it," she whispered. "I actually did it." Daniel pulled her into a fierce hug. "You did it. Your brain, your work, your achievement. I'm so proud of you I could burst." "Dad." She laughed and cried at the same time. "You're embarrassing me." "That's my job." When Daniel finally released her, Lily turned to Elena. "Thank you for helping with the tension distribution. I couldn't have fixed it without you." Elena's expression softened in a way that made Daniel's chest ache. "You would have found the solution eventually. I just pointed you in the right direction. But you came. You believed in me enough to come." Something cracked behind Elena's carefully maintained facade. "Of course I came. She stopped, seeming to catch herself. "Your work deserved recognition." Lily studied her for a moment, with Sarah's perceptive eyes. Then she stepped forward and hugged Elena with the same intensity she'd hugged Daniel. Elena froze. For a long, awkward moment, she stood perfectly still, arms at her sides, clearly uncertain how to respond to the unexpected physical affection. Daniel watched the struggle play across her face, the instinct to pull away, warring with something deeper, something hungry for connection. Then slowly her arms came up and wrapped around Lily. The embrace was brief and slightly awkward, but when they separated, Elena's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for including me in this." Lily smiled. "You're part of our team now. Dad says teams stick together." Elena's gaze shifted to Daniel. Something passed between them that neither tried to name. "I suppose they do," she said. They walked out of the museum together. Daniel, Lily, and Elena, an unlikely trio that somehow fit. Lily talked non-stop about the judge's comments and her plans for future projects. Her certificate clutched like a trophy. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steps. Elena's car was waiting at the curb, her driver standing attentively by the door. "I should get back," Elena said. "There are matters at the office that require attention." Daniel nodded, unsurprised. Elena Blackwood didn't take afternoons off. The fact that she'd carved out time for Lily's competition was remarkable in itself. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It meant a lot. To both of us. It meant a lot to me, too." She hesitated, then added, "More than I expected." Lily tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Dad, can Miss Blackwood come to dinner with us? We're celebrating, right? She should be there." Daniel looked at Elena. "You're welcome to join us. Nothing fancy, just pizza at Lily's favorite place." "I really shouldn't." "Please." Lily's voice carried the same determined certainty that had won over the engineering judges. "You helped make this happen. You should be part of the celebration." Elena looked at Daniel, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. The pull toward connection, fighting against years of learned isolation. The desire to belong warring with the fear of what belonging might cost. "She's right," Daniel said quietly. "You should be there." Elena's resistance crumbled. "All right, pizza it is." Lily cheered and grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward the car. "You can ride with us. Tell your driver to go home." "I don't think." "Come on, it'll be fun." Daniel watched his daughter drag one of America's most powerful CEOs toward a pizza dinner and couldn't help laughing. "Give up," he called to Elena. "She's impossible to argue with. Gets it from her mother." Elena shot him a look that might have been exasperation or amusement or something else entirely. Then she dismissed her driver with a wave and let herself be led toward Daniel's modest sedan. The pizza place was a neighborhood spot with worn booths and checkered tablecloths and the best deep dish in the city. Lily ordered her usual pepperoni with extra cheese, while Daniel got a beer, and Elena, after studying the menu with evident uncertainty, requested a glass of the house red. "I don't think I've eaten pizza in years," she admitted. "My nutritionist would be horrified." "Then fire your nutritionist," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Life's too short to skip pizza." Elena laughed, that genuine sound Daniel was learning to recognize. "You make a compelling argument." The food arrived and they ate together, conversation flowing easily between competition details and engineering theories and childhood memories. Elena talked about her early fascination with building things before algorithms became more profitable. Daniel shared stories about Sarah letting Lily fill in the gaps with her own recollections. For a few hours, they were just three people sharing a meal. Not a billionaire, and a maintenance worker, and a 9-year-old prodigy. Just people. When the check arrived, Daniel reached for it. Elena's hand covered his. "Please. Let me. You've already done so much. I want to." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I want to be part of this. Not as someone providing assistance, but as someone who belongs at the table." Daniel looked at her, really looked, and saw something he hadn't seen before. Not the controlled billionaire, not the guarded woman protecting herself from further betrayal, just someone who desperately wanted to be included, to be wanted for herself, not her resources. "Okay," he said. "But I'm leaving the tip." Elena smiled. Principles don't change based on who's paying. Exactly. They walked back to the car through streets still decorated with Christmas lights. Lily skipped ahead, her certificate tucked safely in her backpack, while Daniel and Elena followed at a slower pace. "Thank you," Elena said, "for today, for letting me be part of it." "Thank you for wanting to be part of it." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what you said, about walls keeping out everything worth living for. And I think I've kept mine up so long, I forgot what they were protecting me from, or whether they were protecting me at all." Daniel reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "Walls can come down," he said. "Not all at once. That's too dangerous. But brick by brick, day by day." "Is that what we're doing? Taking down walls?" "I think so, if you want to." Elena stopped walking. Daniel stopped with her. Lily was half a block ahead now, still skipping, oblivious to the moment unfolding behind her. "I want to," Elena said. "I'm terrified, but I want to." "That's a good start." "Is it enough?" Daniel lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned it surprised even him. "It's enough for today. Tomorrow, we figure out tomorrow." Elena's breath caught. "That's not how I usually operate." "I know, but maybe that's okay. Maybe some things don't need to be planned and calculated and optimized. Maybe some things just need to be lived." For a long moment, Elena simply looked at him. Then slowly she smiled. "You're a very unusual man, Daniel Carter." "So I've been told." They stood there in the cold Chicago evening, hands linked, something new and fragile taking shape between them. Lily called from up ahead, wondering what was taking so long. "Coming," Daniel shouted back. He didn't let go of Elena's hand. They walked the rest of the way together, following Lily toward whatever came next. New Year's Eve arrived with unexpected warmth. Not the weather. Chicago remained locked in winter's grip, but something had shifted in the air around Daniel's life. The apartment on Wellington Avenue felt less like temporary shelter and more like home. His new position at Blackwood Industries was challenging in ways that excited rather than exhausted him. And Elena was becoming something he wasn't ready to name. She'd called that morning with an invitation that caught him off guard. "I'm hosting a small gathering tonight, very informal, just a few people." A pause that carried weight. "I'd like you and Lily to come." "To your place?" "To my penthouse." "Yes." Another pause. "I've never invited anyone there for something personal. Only business meetings, professional functions." Her voice dropped slightly. "I want this to be different." Daniel understood what she was saying beneath the words. This was Elena Blackwood stepping outside her comfort zone, opening a door she'd kept locked for 15 years. "We'd be honored." The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building downtown. Daniel had expected opulence, and there was certainly that, but what struck him most was the emptiness. Vast spaces with minimal furniture. Walls that should have held family photographs but displayed only abstract art. A kitchen that looked like it had never been used for anything more than reheating takeout. This was the home of someone who had stopped believing in the concept of home. Elena met them at the elevator, looking more nervous than Daniel had ever seen her. She'd exchanged her usual business attire for a simple black dress that somehow made her look more vulnerable rather than less. "Welcome to my," she gestured vaguely. "My space. It's beautiful." Daniel meant it, though. Beautiful seemed inadequate for the sleek lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. "It's empty." Elena's voice was flat. "I'm realizing that more clearly tonight than ever before." Lily tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Where's all your stuff, pictures and books and things?" Elena smiled ruefully. "I don't have much stuff. Never saw the point of accumulating things that would just need to be dusted." "But stuff isn't just stuff." Lily frowned with concentration. "It's memories. Dad keeps Mom's recipe cards, even though he knows all the recipes by heart. He keeps my baby pictures even though I'm not a baby anymore. That's not about dusting. That's about remembering who you are." The observation landed with unexpected force. Elena looked at Daniel's daughter with something like wonder. "You're remarkably wise for 9 years old." "Dad says I got it from Mom. Mom said I got it from him. I think I just pay attention to things." The gathering was indeed small, just 5 other people, all of whom worked at Blackwood Industries in various capacities. They treated Elena with obvious deference, but genuine warmth, and Daniel noticed how she relaxed incrementally as the evening progressed. Around 10 o'clock, Lily fell asleep on the enormous leather couch, exhausted from the excitement of recent days. Daniel covered her with a throw blanket and found Elena standing by the windows, watching the city lights below. She was right, you know. Elena didn't turn around. About the stuff. About memories. I gave away everything after Richard's betrayal. Told myself I was being practical, clearing clutter moving forward. Her voice thinned. But really, I was erasing evidence that I'd ever believed in anything. Ever hoped for anything. Daniel moved to stand beside her. Their reflections ghosted in the dark glass, 2 figures outlined against a galaxy of urban light. You can start collecting again. Memories aren't just about the past, they're about the future too. I don't know how. I've spent 15 years avoiding anything that might become a memory, anything that might hurt if I lost it. And how's that working out for you? Elena laughed softly, the same question he'd asked before, the same answer implicit in her silence. Not well, she admitted. Not well at all. Behind them, the other guests were preparing to leave. Midnight approached. The city beyond the windows glittered with anticipation. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Elena turned to face him. Anything. Why me? You could have anyone. You have access to the most powerful, successful, accomplished people in the country. Why a maintenance worker with a frayed collar and $47 in his wallet? Elena was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Do you remember what you said to me that first night at the restaurant? I said a lot of things that night. You said that building walls high enough to keep out pain also keeps out everything worth living for. She met his eyes. No one has ever said anything like that to me. No one has ever looked at me the way you looked at me, not with fear or calculation or greed, but just seeing me, the person behind the position. That's not a very impressive qualification. It's the only one that matters. Elena's voice cracked slightly. I've been surrounded by impressive people my entire career. Powerful people, accomplished people, and every single one of them wanted something from me. Every single one saw me as a means to an end. And me, you refused to give up your table. She laughed, but there were tears in it. You sat across from me and told me I was wrong about everything I'd built my life on. You looked at me like I was just a woman having dinner, not a portfolio worth cultivating. Daniel reached up and touched her face. She flinched slightly, not pulling away, but clearly unused to gentle contact. You are just a woman, he said. A complicated, brilliant, infuriating woman who spent 15 years punishing herself for trusting the wrong people. But you're still just a woman, and you deserve to be seen that way. Even with all my walls can come down. We talked about that. I'm scared, Daniel. It was the first time she'd used his first name. The intimacy of it sent warmth through his chest. I know. I'm scared too. What are you scared of? Everything. He let out a breath. I'm scared of failing Lily. Scared of not being able to provide for her the way she deserves. Scared of dishonoring Sarah's memory by moving forward. Scared of letting you in and losing you. Scared of not letting you in and losing the chance. That's a lot of fear. Fear is the price of caring. It means something matters enough to lose. Elena processed this, her analytical mind turning it over like a problem to be solved. Then she stepped closer, closing the distance between them until barely inches separated their bodies. "I want to try," she whispered. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a relationship that isn't transactional. I don't know how to let someone in without wondering when they'll use what they find against me. But I want to try. With you. Because I refuse to give up my table. Because you refuse to give up on the idea that people can be good, that trust can be rebuilt, that walls can come down." Her eyes glistened. "Because when I look at you with your daughter, I see everything I convinced myself I couldn't have. And I want to be wrong. For the first time in 15 years, I desperately want to be wrong." The countdown began somewhere in the city below. Distant voices rising in anticipation. 10, 9, 8. "Elena." Daniel's voice was rough. "If we do this, if we try this, there's no going back. You can't unknow someone. Can't unexperience what we're building here. I know. 7, 6, 5. And you still want to try? I still want to try. 4, 3, 2. Then Happy New Year." He kissed her as the clock struck midnight. It wasn't a perfect kiss. Their noses bumped. Elena stiffened before softening into it. Daniel could feel her hands shaking where they pressed against his chest. But it was real, raw, honest. When they separated, Elena's eyes were wide with something that looked like wonder. "Oh," she said softly. "Oh good, or oh bad. Oh, different. From anything I expected." She touched her lips with trembling fingers. "I think I've been reading about color all my life and just saw it for the first time." Daniel pulled her into an embrace, her head against his chest, his arms wrapped around her rigid shoulders that slowly, incrementally began to relax. Behind them on the enormous leather couch, Lily stirred briefly in her sleep. A small smile crossed her face, as if even in dreams she knew something important was happening. The city exploded with fireworks beyond the windows, but neither Daniel nor Elena noticed. They were too busy building something new. January unfolded with surprising speed. Daniel started at Blackwood Industries officially on the 2nd, thrown into work that challenged him in ways he hadn't anticipated. His title was Practical Systems Consultant, but his actual role was broader, identifying inefficiencies, preventing failures, applying hands-on knowledge that desk-bound engineers sometimes overlooked. He was good at it. Better than he'd expected. Dr. Nakamura became a mentor of sorts, appreciating Daniel's practical expertise in ways that felt like genuine respect, rather than patronizing accommodation. The work itself was satisfying, solving problems, improving systems, making things work better. But what changed most wasn't his job. It was everything else. Elena came to dinner twice that first week, not to the apartment somewhere in the city neutral ground where they could talk without the weight of whose territory they were on. They argued about politics and philosophy. They discovered shared tastes in obscure documentaries. They laughed at jokes that weren't particularly funny, but felt funny because they were together. She met Lily for breakfast on Saturday, helping with a new engineering project, while Daniel watched from across the table, marveling at how naturally they interacted. Elena still held herself stiffly, still occasionally retreated into corporate formality when emotions got too intense. But she was trying. Visibly, measurably trying. "She's different," Lily observed after Elena left. "Not like when we first met her. Different how? Less sharp, like a knife that's been used for cutting vegetables instead of fighting. Still useful, but..." Lily searched for words. "Safer to be around." Daniel smiled at his daughter's perception. "You okay with that? With her being around more?" Lily considered the question seriously. "Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that once near the end. She said, 'Make sure your dad doesn't forget how to smile after I'm gone.' So if Miss Blackwood makes you smile..." She shrugged. "Then I think Mom would approve." The simple benediction hit Daniel like a physical blow. He pulled Lily into a hug and held her tight, feeling the ghost of Sarah's approval somewhere in the warmth. February brought unexpected resolution. Mrs. Patterson called on a Tuesday morning, her voice trembling with emotion. "Robert, you won't believe it. A woman from some foundation came by yesterday, said there's an apartment available at Lakeview Senior, living the nice place with the garden and the activity center. Rent controlled. Within my budget." Daniel's heart clenched. "That's wonderful, Mrs. P." She said the foundation covers housing assistance for long-term Chicago residents displaced by development. Said my name was submitted months ago, though I never filled out any application. Mrs. Patterson paused meaningfully. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Daniel thought of Elena working behind the scenes through channels that couldn't be traced, solving problems for people she'd never met because he'd asked, because she was learning that walls kept out everything worth living for. "I might have mentioned your situation to someone who could help." "Well, you thank that someone for me. Tell them Ruth Patterson is grateful down to her bones." Her voice cracked. "I didn't think I'd get to stay in Chicago. Thought I'd have to leave everything I've known for 60 years. "You're not going anywhere, Mrs. P. Your home is here." After hanging up, Daniel texted Elena. "Mrs. Patterson just called. She's overwhelmed with gratitude." The response came quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." A pause. Then, "Her new apartment has a garden she can see from her window. I thought that was important." "It is. Thank you." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm learning that some walls are easier to take down than others, and some should never have been built at all." Daniel stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something shift in his chest. Then he typed, "Have dinner with us tonight." At the apartment. The response was almost immediate. "I thought you'd never ask." That evening, Elena arrived with flowers, an arrangement she'd clearly overthought based on how nervously she presented them. "I wasn't sure what was appropriate. My assistant usually handles things like this, but I wanted to pick them myself." "They're perfect." Daniel took the flowers and kissed her cheek. "Lily's finishing homework. She'll be out in a minute." Elena stepped into the apartment, the modest space that bore no resemblance to her penthouse, but somehow felt more like a home. She'd been here several times now, but something about tonight was different, more significant. "I spoke to my foundation director today," she said, settling onto the couch, "about the STEM initiative. The one Lily applied to. She's been accepted. Full scholarship. Summer program at MIT with mentorship continuing through the school year." Daniel sat down heavily. That's incredible." Her application was remarkable. Her projects showed genuine innovation. But what impressed the committee most was her essay. Elena smiled. She wrote about tension distribution in bridges, about how the strongest structures aren't the ones that resist stress, but the ones that redirect it, share it, transform it into stability. She's 9 years old. She's extraordinary, and she's going to change the world someday. Lily emerged from her room homework, finished face lighting up when she saw Elena. The three of them ate dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta with sauce from scratch, talking about school and work, and the engineering competition that had started everything. After dinner, while Lily watched a documentary about suspension bridges in the living room, Daniel and Elena stood in the small kitchen washing dishes together. It had become their rhythm. She washed. He dried their hands, occasionally brushing in the soapy water. "I want to tell you something," Elena said quietly. "About Marcus." Daniel stiffened slightly. Elena's ex-fiancé, her COO, remained a shadow presence in their developing relationship, mentioned occasionally but never directly addressed. "You don't have to." "I want to." She handed him a plate. "I terminated his position yesterday. The board approved his removal this morning." Daniel nearly dropped the plate. "What happened?" "He was conducting unauthorized negotiations to sell company assets to a competitor, the same competitor who received my stolen patents 15 years ago." Elena's jaw tightened. "He was planning to betray me again, using his position to dismantle everything I'd built." "And you stopped him?" "I stopped him. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't let the past paralyze me. Didn't convince myself that keeping enemies close was safer than confronting them. She met his eyes. You asked me once why I kept him around, why I tolerated someone who'd hurt me so deeply. I remember. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that removing him would require me to acknowledge what he'd done, to feel the betrayal I'd spent years numbing. I told myself it was strategy, but it was cowardice. And now I have something worth protecting that's more important than avoiding pain. She reached out and touched his face. You and Lily showed me what it looks like to build something real, something that matters. And I realized I'd been letting Marcus occupy space in my life that should be reserved for things that matter. Daniel caught her hand and kissed her palm. That took courage. It took you. Elena's voice cracked. You walked into my life and refused to give up a table, and somehow that stubborn, principled act became the first crack in walls I thought were impenetrable. Elena, I'm not finished. She took a breath. I love you, Daniel. I don't know when it happened or how. I've spent months trying to analyze it, categorize it, understand it in terms I can control. But love doesn't work that way. It just is. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and light at the same time. I love you too. Daniel's voice was rough. I've been afraid to say it. Afraid of dishonoring Sarah's memory. Afraid of moving too fast. Afraid of everything. And now I realize that fear is just love wearing a disguise, and I'm tired of being afraid. He kissed her properly this time, not the awkward New Year's kiss, but something deeper, more certain. When they separated, both slightly breathless, the kitchen suddenly felt too small to contain what was building between them. Dad? They turned to find Lily standing in the doorway, her expression somewhere between amused and knowing. Are you two going to be gross like this all the time now? Elena laughed, a sound that had become increasingly familiar and increasingly precious. Probably. Is that okay? Lily pretended to consider the question seriously. I guess. But if you're going to be around more, you should know that Saturdays are pancake days, and Sundays we do puzzles, and Thursday nights we watch documentaries about engineering disasters. I think I can manage that schedule. Good. Lily crossed her arms, a miniature version of boardroom Elena. Also, you should know that Dad snores, and he always burns the toast, and he cries at dog movies, even when the dog doesn't die. Lily, Daniel protested. I'm just giving her fair warning. Lily's stern expression broke into a grin. But he also makes the best hot chocolate in the world, and he always knows when you need a hug, and he never makes you feel stupid for asking questions. Elena's eyes glistened. That sounds like a good trade. It is. Lily walked forward and hugged Elena, not the awkward embrace from the competition, but something natural and easy. Welcome to the family, Miss Blackwood. Elena, she corrected softly. If I'm going to be around for Saturdays and Sundays and Thursdays, you should call me Elena. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and transformation. Daniel's position at Blackwood Industries evolved into something larger than he'd imagined. Elena created a new division, Community Infrastructure Initiative, focused on improving building safety standards in affordable housing. Daniel led the practical implementation team, working with engineers and inspectors to identify dangerous conditions before they became disasters. It was meaningful work that saved lives. Lily thrived in the Foundation's STEM program, her natural abilities flourishing under expert mentorship. She spent summer weeks at MIT returning with projects that Daniel barely understood but admired enormously. And Elena continued the difficult work of becoming someone new. It wasn't easy. Old habits persisted. There were arguments, some fierce, and retreats into familiar coldness when emotions overwhelmed her carefully maintained control. But she kept trying, kept pushing against the walls she'd built. One evening in late September, she arrived at the Wellington Avenue apartment with an unusual expression, nervous and excited in equal measure. I want to show you something, she said. She led Daniel and Lily to her penthouse, the same space he'd visited on New Year's Eve with its vast emptiness and sterile perfection. Except now, it wasn't empty. Photographs lined the walls, some of Daniel and Lily, some of Elena's childhood, some of all three together. Books cluttered shelves that had previously held only corporate awards. A throw blanket Lily had made draped over the couch. A ceramic mug with "Number 1 Boss, I guess," that Daniel had given her as a joke sat on the kitchen counter. "I've been collecting," Elena said, her voice uncertain. "Memories." Like Lily said. Daniel walked slowly through the space, taking in each edition, each small piece of a life that was being rebuilt. "This is incredible. It's terrifying." Elena's laugh was shaky. "Every item feels like a risk, something that could hurt if I lost it. And yet you kept going." "I kept going." She moved to stand beside him. "Because you showed me that losing things isn't the worst that can happen. The worst that can happen is never having anything worth losing at all." Lily emerged from examining the photographs. "You have pictures of us from the blizzard. I didn't know anyone was taking pictures. Your father took them while we were working on your bridge design. He sent them to me afterward." Elena smiled. "That was the morning I realized this was real. Whatever was happening between us, it wasn't a business arrangement or a temporary arrangement of convenience. It was real." "What made you realize that?" Daniel asked. "You were explaining tension distribution to Lily, and you got this expression on your face, proud and worried and hopeful all at once. And I thought, I want someone to look at me that way. I want to be part of something that makes someone look that way. And now I am." Elena's voice caught. "Now I have more than I ever dared hope for. A partner who challenges me. A daughter?" She glanced at Lily uncertainly. "If that's okay to say." Lily's response was to throw herself at Elena in a fierce hug. "It's more than okay." Daniel watched the two of them, his daughter and the woman he loved, holding each other in a penthouse that was finally becoming a home. A year ago, he'd been a maintenance worker with $47 and a frayed collar, struggling to provide braces for his daughter. Now he had a career that mattered, a daughter who was changing the world, and a love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. "I have something to tell you both," Elena said, pulling back from Lily's embrace. "I've made a decision about the company." Daniel's heart clenched. "What kind of decision?" "I'm restructuring my role. Less day-to-day operations, more foundation work. More time for—" She gestured vaguely at the transformed penthouse. "This. Building something that matters outside of profit margins and market share. Elena, you don't have to change your whole life for us." "I'm not changing it for you. I'm changing it for me." She took his hand. "You taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or influence. It's measured in whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and like what you see. Whether the people you love are proud to be associated with you. Whether the life you're building has meaning beyond accumulation. And does your life have that meaning now? It's starting to." Elena squeezed his hand. "For the first time in 15 years, I'm excited about the future. Not because of what I might achieve, but because of who I might become." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep in the penthouse's guest room, which Elena had quietly transformed into a permanent space for her, Daniel and Elena stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights below. "A year ago," Daniel said, "you tried to take my table." Elena laughed softly. "A year ago, I was a different person. Someone who measured value in money and power and control. And now I measure it differently." She leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. "In Sunday puzzles and Thursday documentaries. In the way Lily explains engineering concepts with her whole body. In the way you look at me like I'm just a woman, not a portfolio. You are just a woman, a brilliant, complicated, occasionally infuriating woman. Only occasionally infuriating. Frequently infuriating, but I love you anyway." "I love you too." Elena turned in his arms, facing him directly. "Daniel Carter, The man who refused to give up his table. Elena Blackwood, the woman who sat down anyway. Best decision I ever made. Sitting down. Staying. He kissed her as the city hummed beneath them, millions of lives intersecting walls, rising and falling bridges being built and destroyed. Their story had begun with a collision, two people from different worlds clashing over something as trivial as a restaurant table. But what started as conflict had become connection. What started as walls had become bridges. Daniel thought of Sarah, her smile, her wisdom, her final words about not letting bitterness steal their joy. He thought she would have liked Elena, would have appreciated the courage it took to tear down walls built over 15 years of pain, would have approved of this improbable, impossible love that had grown from the most unlikely soil. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked. "Sarah. How she told me not to let bitterness steal the joy from our lives." "And have you let it steal anything?" Daniel looked around the transformed penthouse photographs and books and evidence of a life being rebuilt. He thought of Lily sleeping peacefully in the next room, her future brighter than he'd ever dared imagine. He thought of work that mattered, of a partner who challenged him, of mornings that no longer felt like battles to be survived. "No," he said. "I think I've finally learned to let joy in instead." Elena smiled, the real smile, warm and unguarded, that still surprised him every time he saw it. "Then we should probably get some sleep. Tomorrow's Saturday." "Pancake Day. Pancake Day." She took his hand and led him away from the windows. "And I have a lot to learn about not burning the toast." They walked together into the future they were building, brick by brick, day by day, wall coming down and bridge going up. The city glittered behind them. Somewhere out there, Harrison Development was facing consequences for their crimes. Somewhere, Mrs. Patterson was settling into her new home. Somewhere, other lives were intersecting, other walls rising and falling, other bridges being built. But in this penthouse on this night, three people from vastly different worlds had found something extraordinary. They'd found each other. They'd found home. And they'd learned that sometimes the most important structures aren't made of steel and concrete. They're built from small moments, a shared table, a blizzard, a child's wisdom. From choosing hope over fear. From refusing to give up even when giving up would be easier. Daniel Carter had walked into a restaurant with $47 and a frayed collar. He'd walked out with the beginning of everything. And it had all started because he refused to give up his table. Some bridges connect different worlds. Some walls keep out everything worth living for. And some stubborn acts of principle, small as they seem, become the foundation for something neither person expected. This was their bridge. This was their foundation. This was their love. And it was built to last.